Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we'll be talking about the 2024 Senate elections and the 2024 presidential election. This will be another, I'd say, episode of the postmortem of this election. Again, I'm hoping to do more once we get the final House tally. We're still waiting on a call in California's 13th district as well as California's 45th. For those of you who don't know, California's 45th, both seats are held by Republicans. Democrats look like they're very likely to pick up the 45th. The 15th or the 13th we're still waiting on. It's a pure toss-up. But for now, we have all the Senate races called. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about these Senate races and, focus on the competitive ones. But first of all, the reason that this video I think is interesting is because Republicans had a very good night, but it could have been so much better for them. And what we see is that Donald Trump won all 7 swing states, and he actually did very well in all the blue states, right? We talk about how he improved significantly in New Jersey and New York. He cut into the margins in Virginia. He's going to do pretty well in California when it's all said and done, right? And so he had a great night. And the only states where I think that he didn't really knock out of the park were maybe Georgia and North Carolina, as well as some, he didn't do all that well in Utah, but that doesn't really matter. But Georgia and North Carolina, I think, are the only 2 states, especially of the competitive states, where you can make the argument that Democrats should feel like okay about these. Everywhere else, Trump did well. Everywhere else, Trump outperformed. But in the Senate, what we saw was that the Democratic Party, even though they lost the chamber, did pretty well, all things considered. And so that's what I want to talk about today, is that Democrats, are going to be licking their wounds from this election for the next few years. But they got very lucky that this Senate map was not worse than it is. And they actually had 4 seats that they narrowly won. Obviously, they lost Pennsylvania by literally just, 15, 20,000 votes, which is obviously going to be a heartbreaker for them. But they won Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Nevada very narrowly as well. And all 4 of those states voted for Donald Trump. So we saw 4 states. This is pretty significant. We saw 4 states split their ticket for president and Senate. And that actually hasn't happened since 2012, because in 2020, only 1 state split its ticket. It was Maine with Susan Collins and Joe Biden. 2016, no states split their tickets. And now, 2024, they say it's a polarized era, but this year we saw 4 states split their tickets, and Pennsylvania came within a couple, thousand votes of doing the same. So certainly, Democrats should be grateful that they did not lose more Senate seats. Because again, let's just say that they lost these 4 seats, and I'll be going through them individually here, right? Let's say they lost these 4 seats. They would have had 43, and that would have been a disaster for them, because to be down 43 to or 43 to 57 in the Senate, that's a chamber you're not going to be winning back for at least 2 or 3 cycles. At best, if Democrats were down to 43 seats, at best they would have been able to win it back maybe in 2030, right? So it would have been a complete disaster for them. It would have locked them out of power effectively in half of Congress for the next 6 years, and that very nearly happened. So they averted disaster by getting very lucky in those 4 states. Obviously, they would have liked to have Pennsylvania, but I think that they went 4 for 5 in the really, really close races, which obviously is better for them than the presidential race, where in the really, really close races, obviously Kamala Harris came up just short, especially in states like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. So let's talk about this, right? So what we saw across the country was a pretty significant red shift, right? Again, especially you look at the states with these Senate races. Pennsylvania, pretty red. Michigan, red all around except for a few places in the north. Wisconsin, red all around except for the WOW counties. And then you go to Arizona, it was literally all red. Like Donald Trump did like almost 6. I think he did 6.5 points better than he did in 2020. So it was all red. Nevada was also all red with a few exceptions here, right? And so these states all shifted red. It wasn't like, say, Georgia, where we had at least some parts of the Atlanta suburbs that actually shifted pretty significantly towards Harris. Or in North Carolina, in the Appalachian region, we actually saw Harris do fairly well there. And then Utah, again, we saw some counties in Utah and, western Colorado shift towards Harris. But again, in these swing states, in these states with the Senate races, Trump crushed it. So I want to start by taking a look at Nevada, because this is a race that the GOP, and I actually hate the dots. We're just going to go individually here. So the GOP really gave up on this race with 2 months ago. Sam Brown was down by double digits in the polls, and this is actually a pretty good showing for him, all things considered. Again, there was a significant third-party vote here. I'm not really sure who that hurt. I think it probably didn't really end up mattering, because none of these candidates got 44,000 votes, and that's obviously not really a partisan thing. But what I will say is this. I think Republicans, had they known it was going to be this close, would have had a different, approach to the Senate map, because they would have really, at least I would think, have invested in Sam Brown's campaign. Because again, he only lost this race by around 25,000 votes, or less than 2% of all votes cast. And Jackie Rosen won re-election, but she didn't even get to 48%, so she didn't really have the mandate, right? But let's talk about this race, because what's interesting about Nevada to me is that Donald Trump did lose Washoe County narrowly. He did a bit better than he did in 2020, but he lost Washoe County. But the reason he won Nevada was because he did a lot better in Clark. He actually only lost Clark County by 2%. This is a county that Hillary Clinton won by 9, that Joe Biden won by 7. In Trump, the reason that he won Nevada, it's simple. It's because of Clark County. It's a big county, cast around 3/4 of the vote. He won it by 2, or he lost it by 2. The difference in this race was that Jackie Rosen, or is it Sam Brown, the Republican, lost by 8. That's literally all it comes from. Obviously, Jackie Rosen did pretty well in Washoe County as well. She won it by 15,000 votes. Harris only won it by 3,000, so that certainly helped her. But again, Harris lost by 45,000 votes statewide, right? And Jackie Rosen won by 25,000. So there was still a ticket split a lot bigger than just what happened in Washoe. And really what it came from was Clark. Because again, in Clark County, Harris got 520,000 votes. Jackie Rosen got fewer votes, obviously, but the difference is that Donald Trump got, 50,000 more votes than Sam Brown. Notably, we also saw Jackie Rosen do okay in some of the exurban counties. Carson City, she got 44%. Harris only got 43%. She lost by 11. Rosen lost by 6. Again, that's kind of where the third-party vote comes in. And then obviously in the rural areas, it was a bit more stagnant. We did see Nye County, which is actually I think a county that has significant Hispanic population, where Democrats have been doing worse recently. Jackie Rosen, she lost this county by 36%, which is a lot, but a lot less than Harris, who lost it by, as you can see here, 42%. So, Rosen did better than Harris essentially everywhere, but the difference came in Clark County. That's where most of the votes are. And at the end of the day, if you're a Democrat, to win Nevada, to overcome these rural areas, even though they're small, they still add up a good amount, right? To overcome these rural areas, you got to win Clark County by at least 5-6 points, and she didn't do that. She, again, only won it by 2, and that's going to be really bad for her, going, in the future, because at the end of the day, Democrats have relied on Clark County to win Nevada for the better part of the last 2 decades, and if they can't, bank at least a 5-6 point margin of victory here, it's going to be difficult for them. So I think this state could be on borrowed time for Democrats. We'll have to see what it looks like in 2026 and 2028, but certainly I would argue that the Democrats got very lucky here. Jackie Rosen got just enough ticket splits. And also we saw Sam Brown, 677K, Trump 751K. There were 80,000 Trump voters who just didn't, vote for Sam Brown. So that's kind of where, to me, that's what the difference is here, obviously. So that's what happened in Nevada. But I want to go to neighboring Arizona, because this was, I think, the craziest ticket split we saw. Donald Trump won Arizona. It wasn't really close. He won it, as you can see here, by 5.5%. And he did this by essentially doing better in every county. I showed you the shift map from 2020, right? Every county in Arizona swung towards Donald Trump. But let's focus on the big ones, right? Obviously, rural Arizona, it helps Republicans, but what's important here is Pima and Maricopa. And these are both counties that voted for Joe Biden in 2020. We saw that in 2020, Joe Biden, he won Pima by 4 points more than Harris. He won Maricopa by 6 points more than Harris. Harris actually lost Maricopa, obviously. What happened here was that we saw Donald Trump cut into the margin in Pima. Again, this is a blue county. It's where Tucson is. I think it's majority Hispanic. Democrats do quite well here. But again, Harris won it by 15. Biden won it by, I think, 920. Then in Maricopa, which Biden won by 3, Harris lost by 3. And Harris actually got fewer votes than Biden did, even though this is a growing county. Biden got around, I think, a little over 1 million votes. Harris is going to get 980,000 when it's all said and done here. So she lost. She just outright, I think, Democratic turnout in Phoenix potentially suffered. We also saw some Biden voters did not likely came out for Trump this time. And so Donald Trump, this is the state I think I was most wrong about. I had Trump only winning it by about a point, and he won it by well over 5. So, again, Maricopa really caught me off guard here, because this is a growing left-trending county where I think Democrats have been, really, they've had a winning streak here. They haven't lost this county in a federal race since 2016, and obviously that streak was broken this year, right? But, I'd say, this year what we really saw was that the suburbs, especially in states like Arizona and Nevada, did not come out for Democrats. And that's why Donald Trump won Arizona, by the amount he did, especially. But in the Senate race, Democrats got lucky. Again, Ruben Gallego was able to pull it out. He won Maricopa County by 6%, so he actually did better than Trump here, and that's what made the difference, right? Because if we look at rural Arizona, he did better than Harris, certainly, right? He got 22 in Mojave, he got 25, he got 31 in La Paz, she got 28. So, he did better in rural Arizona. What matters is he got 1 million, he got 45,000 votes over 1 million. She got 20,000 less than 1 million. So he just outright got 65,000 more votes than her in Maricopa County. And again, if you look at the amount he won by, right, he won by less than 100,000. He won by 80,000 here, just guesstimating it. So that's significant here. And then Pima County, again, he won by 21, Harris won by 15. That's the difference. It's just these two counties. Like, that's what I'm saying. Arizona, you just got to look at these two counties. You're going to know who's going to be able to win this state. And so Donald Trump, while he was flipping Maricopa and cutting into the margin in Pima, Ruben Gallego actually did better than Joe Biden in both these counties. He did 3 points better in Maricopa and about 2 points better in Pima. Now, the reason that Kari Lake actually came close, by the way, both these results, if you apply them to 2020, Lake would have lost by more. She came close because Donald Trump had a heck of a performance in rural Arizona. And I'm not just talking about margins. I'm talking about turnout, right? You look at the turnout. These are small counties that don't have a lot of people. Mojave County, he gets 85,000 voters to come out for him, nearly 100,000 in Yavapai, 19,000 in Gila County, 127K in Pinal County, which is more exurban. And then you go to Graham and Greenlee, which are right trending recent years. He got 11,000 in Graham and 2,000 in Greenlee. Now, obviously, what we saw in Greenlee and Graham was that obviously, and all these rural counties, Gallego outran Harris, but what mattered was that the turnout was there for Kari Lake. She could have won this race had she just held on to the Trump 2020 numbers. Even though Trump lost the state, Kari Lake would have won if she held on to Trump 2020 numbers in Maricopa and in Pima. So that's what really sealed the deal for Gallego, is that he actually, I think, kind of did the best, I think in terms of trends, right? He didn't win by holding on to these rural areas. He won by, even losing badly in the rural areas, but really making the gains the Democrats expected to make in Maricopa and Pima. And so Democrats, again, Kamala Harris lost Arizona by well over 150,000 votes here, really almost 190,000 votes. Gallego was able to win it by around 80,000 because he got the ticket splits in the two big counties. That's what mattered. So Arizona and Nevada, as we can see here, the Republicans, they won these states presidentially, didn't win them on the Senate. And again, in Arizona, they really should have won this race, right? Kari Lake was a bad candidate, and she was also kind of triaged, not to the extent that Sam Brown was, but Republicans didn't think she was going to win either. And Gallego, he won, but it wasn't a landslide, certainly. So let's now talk about Wisconsin, because Wisconsin was a state that Democrats actually did pretty well in all things considered. The country swung 6 points to the left, but Wisconsin only moved about a point and a half to the country swung 6 points to the right. Wisconsin only moved about a point and a half to the right. Democrats had a pretty good ground game here. I think that they really saved themselves from losing the Senate seat because of how well they canvassed, because of how well I think of how good of a candidate Tammy Baldwin was. But what we saw was that Baldwin and Harris did pretty similarly in the WOW counties. Waukesha, Harris got 39. She got 31 in Washington, 44 in Ozaukee. Baldwin got 39, same in Waukesha, same in Washington. And let's see, Ozaukee, I think she got a couple points more. Yeah, she actually got a point less. So she actually lost Ozaukee by more than Harris. But what mattered was that in the western part of the state, in the drift list, in these counties out here, Baldwin did a lot better than Harris. South County is a good example of this. Is kind of a bellwether. Baldwin won it by around 600 votes. Kamala Harris lost it by around 600 votes. That, is kind of a good microcosm here. But really what we look at is you look at these driftless counties. These are counties that Baldwin won in 2018, but she lost this time. The good news for her is that she came close. She only lost Vernon by 3, Crawford by 7, Grant by 14. Harris lost Grant by 18. She lost Crawford by 13, and she lost Vernon by 8. So she did, significantly worse than Tammy Baldwin in these counties. And again, if we look at areas like Dane County, which actually Trump did quite well in, he got 23% of the vote. Eric Hovde, he did similarly, and that's, I think that's kind of what allowed him to compensate for these losses, because again, he kind of ran even with Trump, maybe slightly better in the WOW counties, did a lot worse in the driftless area. He held on to Trump's numbers in Dane County. And then I think we kind of broke the tie here as you look at these mid-sized cities like Green Bay, Eau Claire, La Crosse. La Crosse County, Baldwin won it by 12. Harris did all right there. She only won it by 9, though. Harris won Eau Claire by 11, and Baldwin won it by 12. And then in Brown County, which is where Green Bay is, which actually Tammy Baldwin won last time, she did lose by 6 points this time, but she did better than Harris, who lost it by 7. And again, Trump got 79,000 votes here. Eric Hovde got 76,000. And so, it may seem small, but again, this race was decided by, 29,000 votes between Baldwin and Hovde. Every vote matters, and Wisconsin's a very close state. So, this state, there was less of a crazy ticket split than Arizona. It wasn't like, we had a county as big as Maricopa where you had literally almost 100,000 people splitting their ticket. But we did see, ticket splits that were prevalent enough, especially in rural and working class regions, for Trump at the top of the ticket, but Baldwin below Harris, that Baldwin was able to pull out a very narrow victory. Again, I think Republicans, obviously Harris did okay in Wisconsin, all things considered. Democrats got the turnout they needed to an extent, but at the same time, I do want to acknowledge that Eric Hovde did pretty well. I'm proud of my call in this race. I said that the gap was closing, that I think the delta between Baldwin and Harris was going to be less than 2%. It ended up being literally around 2%. So we saw that Eric Hovde ran a good enough campaign to kind of take away the advantage that Baldwin had, because in 2018, Baldwin ran 10 points ahead of Tony Evers at the top of the ticket, right? She is an overperformer historically. Eric Hovde neutralized like 80% of that. So I think that's a salute to how good of a campaign he ran at the end of the day, but it wasn't enough to unseat Baldwin, who is still a good incumbent. So let's finally talk about Michigan. This was a race where I think Democrats got very, very lucky. Now, at the top of the ticket, this was a pretty shocking result. I thought Trump was going to lose the state by around 3 points, right? What happened was Democrats obviously didn't do well enough in the suburbs. They did okay in the western part of the state, but they didn't really do well in the suburbs over here. But Wayne County was a disaster for Kamala Harris. I mean, she got 63% of the vote here. If you look at the shift from 2020, that's 9 points worse than Joe Biden, who, by the way, Joe Biden didn't even do all that well in Wayne. He only, he did, in the city of Detroit itself, he did worse than Hillary Clinton. So that's, to me, what's really interesting about this race is that we saw in Michigan, in Wayne County, Harris collapsed. And I think a lot of that is because of obviously the people who are upset about Gaza. You have a significant Muslim community, especially in Dearborn. Donald Trump won Dearborn by 6 points. It voted for Biden by 34 in 2020. So we literally saw like a 45 point shift in that city itself. Obviously, that wasn't the reason she lost Michigan, but it's kind of an example of, in a close state, you can't lose thousands of votes like that with the snap of a finger. And also we saw that turnout in Wayne County was down. Kamala Harris got 536,000 votes here. If we look at, let's see if I can, I can't see if I can pull up 2020 here, actually. Here we go. I don't like to do that because it's annoying, but let's see. Just to see here. Biden got 597,000. So Harris got over 60,000 votes less. She lost state by around 75,000. So, that's just not what you want to see if you're Harris in Michigan. But the good news for Democrats was that despite, I think this was a pretty bad performance. Obviously, Harris, I would say, she did poorly in Nevada and Arizona. She did, all things considered, okay in Wisconsin. She did okay in Georgia and North Carolina. In Michigan, though, I think this was a disaster. She lost the state by a lot more than Hillary Clinton did. This is a state that Democrats had no business losing. Donald Trump in 2016 won it by like 10,000 votes. Since then, Republicans hadn't come close to winning anything here, and Trump wins it back in 2024. Now, Democrats got very lucky. In the Senate race, they won by around 20,000 votes here, maybe 21,000. And what really happened here was that people who voted, Trump got 2.8 million votes. Rogers got less than 2.7 million. So there were like 120,000 people who voted for Trump who didn't vote for Mike Rogers. The interesting thing here is that Alyssa Slotkin, it wasn't like a ticket split. Slotkin got fewer votes than Harris. Harris got, 2.72 million. She got 2.71 million. So there was just an undervote here, and we saw in the Senate race there were 5.56 million votes cast. Presidential race, 5.64 million votes cast. There were just tens of thousands of people who voted in the presidential race, did not vote in the Senate race. And obviously, some of these people were Harris voters, some of these people were Trump voters, but more of them were Trump voters who didn't vote for Mike Rogers. Had Rogers literally just gotten even the amount of votes that Kamala Harris got, he would have won the Senate race by 16,000 votes. And so I think this is the race where I think Republicans literally just got I think it was very unfortunate what happened to Rogers here. And what really mattered is that it wasn't like we got huge ticket splits. Obviously, Slotkin did win Muskegon County, but only by 100 votes. And Harris, let's see, I think she lost it, but she lost it by around 1,500. So there's certainly a ticket split, but it wasn't like that was what mattered, like the way it was in Arizona. It was just the undervote. It was that at the end of the day, you go to rural Michigan, you go to the Republican working class areas like Macomb County. Rogers got just significantly fewer votes than Trump. And I think this is the race where, again, Democrats should be very grateful that they pulled this out, because Slotkin could have easily lost this had Republicans just voted down ballot. And so that's significant too. So again, that's what happened in this Senate map. We saw Democrats came very close to a near wipeout. Again, just to recap this, you go to Arizona, had just 50, 60,000 fewer people not split their ticket. We would have had Senator Kari Lake. In Nevada, we would have had Jackie Rosen had, she only got 48% of the vote. If people had not voted their party, or if they, again, voted down ballot for Trump in Clark County, we would have had Senator Sam Brown. In Wisconsin, again, Harris did okay here. I think this was kind of the race where Democrats just got the normal expected ticket split. But again, had Baldwin just done 20, 30,000 votes worse across the state, she would have lost to Eric Hovde. In Michigan, this is the craziest thing. If the Trump voters, if just a few thousand, just let's see, the margin was 20,000. If just 20,000 more Trump voters had just remembered to vote down ballot and click all, take all the boxes, Mike Rogers wouldn't have been a senator too. So this was a very, a very bad night for Democrats, but it could have been so much worse. It could have set them back, essentially almost a decade in the Senate, and they avoided that just barely. So I want to talk about that. It's a really fascinating thing. I'm going to talk more about the presidential race. I want to go state by state in the future here within the next few weeks. But again, for now, let me know what you want to see. I'll see you all in the next video.